Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to NRRL's 50% Thursday division. Today we are here for the Canadian Grand Prix. My name is JP, I'm your commentator, and tonight we are here in Montreal for what is shaping up to be a brilliant weekend of action. The stream is a little bit late, so I do apologise, but we are here now and we are ready for a wonderful event here in Canada. Hopefully all shall go well for all of our drivers. We've currently got drivers on their first laps in qualifying, so don't worry if you are just joining, you haven't missed too much. We've just got PRST Kevin, who goes to the top of the timesheets with an 11.4. I think a common theme you will be seeing today around this track is invalidations. It's very easy to invalidate around this circuit, especially at this chicane that Matt Connor is just going through. He manages to negotiate it perfectly and is through and away on his lap now. But it is very easy to invalidate around this circuit, and that will play dividends not only in qualifying but in the race with time penalties. The V-carb a little bit troubled there for front grip, and he does invalidate. And you could just see there the car understeering as he tried to turn it in. Josh is currently on a lap in the Ferrari. And as we can see, only one driver set a lap so far, and that is course of the invalidations. It is very easy to make a mistake around this circuit, dip one wheel over the curb, and that is your lap done. As we saw Matt Connor into this chicane, trouble turning the car in. He manages to negotiate it well as Josh picks up a little bit of a slipstream there from the Haas car of Kay Garley, who's on his outlap. And Josh into the chicane a little bit deep there from the Ferrari driver, but nothing that will trouble him too much. A little bit of a wiggle on the exit, and as he now comes down the main back straight and is flying towards the final chicane. Again, very easy to invalidate, and that probably will be the story of qualifying here tonight, that it is so easy to invalidate. Josh goes to the top of the timesheets with a 1:10.8. We've got Mikey Boy, who is on a lap at the minute, one of the quicker drivers that we've seen in NRRL in recent weeks, and really about a month that we've seen Mikey absolutely flying, and I expect that his form will continue today in Canada as he now comes towards this very tricky chicane. Not easy for the drivers, but he manages to negotiate it well, and he now comes up towards the hairpin. Gets it nicely turned in, does Mikey, and now sets off down the back straight once more. Mikey comes to the line then in the Sauber, goes second with a 1:11 flat. Kay Garley is on a lap now, coming towards the final chicane. And it seems that there are some lobby issues going on here. This is very, very glitchy. Kay Garley comes across the line, goes P6 in his Haas. Dan Lovett has invalidated his lap and is coming into the pit lane. IRL Schumacher is on a lap now. And he's coming through the second of the chicanes. Through the hairpin now comes the Red Bull. And the Red Bull now coming towards the final chicane, tips it in right, then tips it out left, manages to make his way through. To the line comes the Red Bull and goes P7 with a 1:14.4. We now look to drivers like Hash in the Aston Martin, massively tags the wall there, and I wonder, well, no damage to the Aston Martin, and that was really quite lucky. I was almost convinced that there would be some front wing damage after a hit like that into the wall. DGH coming through that very chicane, showing really how you should be taking it. Matt Connor coming out of the hairpin now and might be getting a little bit of a tow here from the Alpine of Sergeant Devsey, so that will help Matt Connor in his pursuit of provisional pole position as he comes through the final chicane now. Then applies the overtake button. What sort of lap is it going to be for Matt Connor? Goes P4. We'll go back to Hash, who is now on his lap, coming through the final corner, invalidates through the final corner, so he will not set a valid lap time thus far. DGH now coming up to that final corner, manages to make his way through, and DGH comes across the line now and goes fastest with a 1 minute 10.5. So a very good lap from the Haas driver, one that we've not really seen up towards the top in recent weeks, but a good turn of form from him. KLR Dizzy now on a lap. He's just coming through the turn 1-2 complex, and we will go on board with the Williams as he tips it through this chicane. All going neatly for the Williams thus far. And Kevin has got a 5-place grid penalty for a collision with Bruiser. I can't say that we saw that, but the Mercedes driver has had some sort of incident. And Meldrum coming in with the 5 gifted subs. Meldrum, you absolute legend. Currently sat in the pit lane is Meldrum, might I say. In the McLaren, sat in the pit lane, dropping subs. A hype train has now started. Absolutely brilliant. What is going on? This is absolutely insane. Meldrum, you madman. Get out on the track. Do some laps. This is insane. Meldrum, thank you very much, my friend. Absolutely brilliant stuff. We've said it before when Meldrum's come in and gifted subs. He's meant to be out on the track. What is going on? Actually, I think I've figured it out. Meldrum, is this you prepaying the amount of penalties you're going to get? Are we hearing 5 time penalties in the Canadian Grand Prix? No, genuinely, Meldrum, thank you very much, buddy. Thank you very, very much. KLR Dizzy went into second place with a 1 minute 10.6. Dan Lovett is now coming through the final corner and comes to the line. Will set a valid lap time, will the Ferrari, and goes on to provisional pole position. A 1 minute 10.3 from Dan Lovett. And the man who has just been looking to eke himself into some better form in recent races finds himself on provisional pole. I have no grip. Now coming through the middle sector. He's one of the quicker drivers in recent weeks, and he will look to try and displace Dan Lovett's lap. He's just coming through the chicane now, applying the overtake. And let's see, where does I have no grip come then? He is coming through the chicane now. There's a yellow flag for the Haas in front of him, or I believe may have ran out of fuel. And is just trying to make his way back to the pit lane. I have no grip. We're on board with the Williams driver now, as he comes towards the final chicane and comes into the pits, interestingly enough. Sergeant Devsey is on a lap as we speak, as is Josh. Josh will be the first to finish his flying lap. Comes through the chicane, looking to displace his Ferrari teammate. Needs about not a 2/10 gain, about a 5/10 gain to try and get that. He gets a 3/10 gain, moves up to 4th. Next to try and challenge Dan Lovett will be Mikey Boy. Although Mikey Boy set his lap, he's within a couple of hundredths of Dan Lovett. So very close out in front. Sergeant Devsey, I believe, has backed off of his lap. IRL Schumacher has gone to P10 with a 1 minute 12.7. Hash is on a lap now. But for Dan Lovett, that is absolutely crucial. Like I say, he's been bogged down with some bad luck recently, and he's had a few incidents, and he's not been 100% has Dan Lovett, but this will be absolutely what he needed to try and bounce back. Hash now coming towards the final chicane, manages to negotiate it well, so will be able to complete a valid lap time. It won't challenge pole position. It's a 1 minute 11.4 for the Aston Martin driver. Next driver to go on a lap is Mr. J. We've also got Kevin, who is on a lap and is about a tenth, 2 tenths up. And he is now coming through towards the final chicane. 4 minutes left to go in this session, and it is Dan Lovett on provisional pole. Kevin comes to the line, sets a 1 minute 11.1, slots himself into P6. Hash is on his in-lap. Sergeant Devsey is on his lap and is coming towards the final couple of corners now. Manages to swing it in perfectly. The Alpine looking to improve from P12. Goes up to P10 with a 1 minute 12.3. Mr. Jabe is also on a lap. He's coming towards the final chicane now then. And where can the Aston Martin go? Currently in P7. Needs about a 2/10 improvement to try and gain a position from Kevin. He comes across the line now. Gets that improvement up to P6. So 1 minute 11.1. And now the drivers just start to creep out of the pit lane to begin their final flying laps. Mikey will be the first... Oh no, DGH, sorry, will be the first of the top 3 to set a flying lap. And we will stick with the Haas driver as he looks to put his claim on pole position. He's currently got a 1 minute 10.5. He will need about a 2/10 improvement if he wants to try and challenge for pole. And that is then just mere milliseconds between Dan Lovett and Mikey. It will be Mikey who will set his lap first. Dan Lovett, with the ideal track position, will be last to set a lap. As DGH now comes towards the hairpin and is 2.5 tenths down. And he has put it into non-ERS mode. Is he going to try and regain the battery? I don't think he's going to be able to regain it that quickly. That's the issue. As he's already on the final straight, he's not going to have a full battery going into his final lap. As Mikey now is doing, I believe, a double out lap. So that will be interesting to see. DGH actually comes into the pits. So that is his session over. Mikey doing a double out lap. Dan Lovett is most certainly not doing that. So Dan Lovett will be the first man to set their lap in the hunt for provisional pole. Although Josh is in the fight for pole and is nearly 3 tenths up. So could Josh be a late arrival on the scene for pole? He's 3 tenths up. At this rate, Josh would be on for pole position. He just needs to hold that time through the final sector. And Josh could snatch pole away from his Ferrari teammate. Dan Lovett is coming through the second sector now. We will stick on board with Josh as he reaches the final chicane. Negotiates it well, no invalidations. Can Josh snatch pole away from his teammate? Yes, he can. Dan Lovett is down on his lap as well. So Dan, who was on provisional pole, has had that snatched away by his teammate and is not improving. Mikey is on his outlap now. There's about a minute left of the session, but Dan and Josh will not have the chance to go for another lap as Dan now comes through the final chicane, smashes into the wall of champions and invalidates. So Dan's lap would have been a 1 minute 10.4. He was a 10th down, and that is Dan Lovett out of the fight for pole. So now our attention turns to Mikey as Dizzy has invalidated his lap. Mr. Jabe, Kevin and Matt Connor are on out laps and flying laps now. But for Josh and for Dan Lovett, it's currently a Ferrari 1-2 What can Mikey bring to the table? He's a 10th up. And that is all he would need to try and take pole position back. So this is an epic fight to the end of qualifying as the Sauber driver now looks to snatch it away from Ferrari. The Tifosi will have had their hands in the airs as the Ferrari go 1 and 2. But as the session is now over, the Sauber comes towards the hairpin and is a 10th and a half up. And it is going to be very, very close between himself and Josh. But he's got battery to play with, does the Sauber, as he now comes towards the final corner. Can he split the Ferraris? Can he do one better and take pole position? Mikey invalidates at the final chicane. He will complete his lap, and the lap time would have been a 1 minute 10.272. He would have been 12 seconds off of pole position. He would have split the Ferraris, but nothing doing for him. Dizzy is going to get a final flying lap. Can he try and challenge the pole sitters as he comes to the line now, goes into P3, punishes Mikey's mistake, but in Canada, it is a Ferrari 1-2. Josh leads Dan, and the Tifosi will be in raptures as Ferrari, the prancing horse, 1 and 2 once more. It is Josh from Dan Lovett, and what a qualifying session we have seen tonight. And there is your order then. It is Josh on pole from Dan Lovett in second. And at the end of it all, 69 milliseconds was all that could separate the Ferraris. It is then Dizzy in third, Mikey Boy in fourth, DGH fifth, Kevin in sixth, who will take a 5-place grid penalty, Mr. Jabe in seventh, Matt Connor 8th, Hash 9th, Sergeant Devsey 10th. It is Bruiser in 11th, IRL Schumacher 12th, Kegali in 14th, with I Have No Grip and Meldrum failing to set lap times. But what an end to qualifying that was, and if that is a precursor for the race, that will be an absolutely brilliant event. Meldrum coming in with another gifted sub. Meldrum, where was the lap time, my friend? What's going on? And it's wet! It's the first wet race in NRRL history. I didn't even know we could have wet races in NRRL. Meldrum's blessed us with wet weather. It's the gifted subs. He's brought the rain. Meldrum, you legend. No way. It is, I believe it's full wet from what I can see in the pits. They are full wet tyres in the garage of Dan Lovett. Oh my word. I don't know what to say. It's the first wet race in NRRL history. And after that qualifying, this is going to be brilliant. I cannot believe what I'm seeing, ladies and gentlemen. I didn't even know we could have wet races in NRRL. And here in Canada, Montreal, the heavens have opened, and this is going to be absolutely brilliant. Now, I will quickly check the Discord for the drivers and constructors standings. It is currently Mikey that leads the standings from Dan Lovett, Josh, and Bijo. And they were the points after the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. The constructors, the leaders are currently Sauber on 113 points to Ferrari on 93. So my apologies, I do not have the graphic, but they are the standings. Mikey from Dan Lovett from Josh, and while Ferrari are 20 points, behind in the Constructors' Championship. A 1-2 in qualifying, followed by a wet race at a track where it's already difficult to overtake. They have got an absolutely brilliant chance of gaining some crucial points in the Constructors' Championship standings tonight. We just now await those iconic 5 red lights. And there they are then. Ladies and gentlemen, 5 red lights ahead of the Canadian Grand Prix. And it is lights out and away we go. And Dan Lovett has got a brilliant start. So has KLR Dizzy. And into turn 1, Dizzy makes it through into the lead. Now the tyres are going to be the talking point. We've got Dan Lovett on inters, Josh on inters, Meldrum, I Have No Grip, and IRL Schumacher on inters. Everybody else is on the full wet tyres, and Dan Lovett on the inters is struggling, and Mikey is coming at him towards the chicane, goes round the outside, does the Sauber, and up into second place. And Dizzy is absolutely flying away as DGH is now looking to come at the Ferrari of Dan Lovett, and it is absolutely chucking it down. As now, DGH with a little bit of a mistake there, and he comes through. We've got Mr. Jabe, who is now up to P4. Dan Lovett really beginning to struggle. Matt Connor is in 5th. DGH in 6th. Hash is in 7th in a big fight with Josh in the Ferrari. Our pole sitter falling way back after the start. Mr. Jabe and Dan Lovett really having it out in the opening phases of this Grand Prix. Dan Lovett on the intermediates, an inspired choice and maybe the wrong choice, as Dan Lovett was second, got overtaken into turn 1, and look at the gaps that Dizzy and Mikey have. Dan Lovett in 3rd is under a lot of pressure from Mr. Jabe, and the full wet tyres do look best for now. It is Matt Connor in 5th, DGH in 6th. I did think DGH had some damage there, but he does not. And look how torrential the conditions are. You can barely see the cars as they come through turn 1. Dizzy will have the best viewpoint though. And look how gingerly they have to take to the circuit. And look how quickly the gap is coming down between Mikey and Dizzy. Mr. Jabe in all of that managed to get past Dan Lovett, and there's some contact between Hash and Matt Connor, who's now trying to go around the outside of DGH. Good move there from the Aston Martin. Manages to get through. He's now chasing down Matt Connor, who is right over the back of Dan Lovett. And Dan Lovett struggling in these conditions on these intermediate tyres. He is not taking to the track well, and he is really beginning to tumble backwards. Mikey is right on the back of Dizzy, and these wet conditions seem to be favouring the Sauber driver, although he has had a bit of a snap there out of the hairpin. Nothing doing for him, but he is draining that overtake button. A lot of confidence for him. And Matt Connor is really beginning to come at Dan Lovett now then. The V-carb is gaining, and towards the final chicane we go. He is going to pull out. He is going to look for a move down the inside. Dan Lovett a bit later on the brakes, and look how treacherous it is. There isn't even a racing line. It is just bogged down absolutely everywhere. You just cannot see where to go, and everyone locking up and sliding around. These are some of the worst conditions I have ever seen on the F125 game, and these drivers are adapting to it, some very well, some not at all. Matt Connor still right behind Dan Lovett here, and they are trying to push the limits as best as they can, but it is so difficult, and Dan Lovett on the intermediates must be crying his eyes out at that choice, because this cannot be easy at all to try and stay out during these conditions. horrible stuff. As we see now, Mikey is beginning to gain on Dizzy once more, and through the hairpin they go. The Sauber looking to gain on the Williams driver as they now come through and towards the back straight, and Dizzy is draining that battery, as is Mikey. Matt Connor is really beginning to come at Dan Lovett here. The gap ever closing, and Hash just falling off the back of this battle as the V-Carb once more to the final corner, gaining a lot later on the brakes this time. He looks to the inside. There is contact between the two of them. Further behind, there's a big battle there between DGH and the Mercedes of Kevin. DGH manages to get the move done, but picks up a penalty in doing so. Matt Connor not able to get past Dan Lovett yet. Dan is doing a good job to defend that 4th place. Matt Connor on the inside again. Nothing doing for him. And he is going to get a bit frustrated behind that Ferrari now. And he's so close to the back of him. Almost pushing him through every single corner as he tries to promote himself up into 4th. And you can see how wet it is. It is so difficult to drive in these conditions. Mikey is just dropping off of the back. And there's Matt Connor looking for an inspired move there down the inside. Even more contact between Matt and Dan Lovett. Mr. Jabe is actually beginning to gain on Mikey boy. And it's going to be interesting to see how these battles pan out. 35 lap Canadian Grand Prix here today. And I don't know if it's going to be a 1-stop or a 2-stop. I would imagine a 1-stop race on wet tyres. But Matt Connor is really putting Dan Lovett under pressure here today. But Dan seems to be coping absolutely beautifully under the pressure. Here comes Matt Connor again though. And through the spray they come. And you can see there is a tiny little bit now of a racing line that is beginning to form. And that will be helping Dan Lovett. And it seems that... Have I been disconnected or has the session ended? I'm not completely sure. That is quite weird, I must say. We will get back to you and see what is going on with this. I'm really not sure what's going on. It says that the race is already done and we're seeing the podium procedure. So I will find out what is going on there and we will get back to you. And we will see what happens then. I believe that is some sort of lobby glitch or something like that. I'm really not sure what's going on there. And I have just posed a question in the Discord and we will see what is going on with the session. Interesting to see what's going on here, I must say. And we will just await to see any sort of update from the admins. Apologies to any viewers on Twitch or TikTok. Believe there's been some sort of lobby glitch. And it has just been confirmed that it is a lobby restart. I'm just trying to confirm whether it will be a 50% race or a 35% race. I would imagine 35, as we've already taken up a bit of time of the 50% race, and it would be quite a long while if we are doing another 50%. I do believe we are doing another 50% though. Well, more laps for racing, I guess, but I must say I'm gonna be tired by the end of this one, my word. Apologies again to anyone on Twitch or TikTok that is viewing. We will be getting back in as soon as possible. I believe it will go from qualifying results, so those laps that we did see do not matter whatsoever. So I imagine by that logic, it will be Josh starting on pole position. Then followed by Dan Lovett. Would just like to say as well, ladies and gentlemen, if you aren't following us already, bringing you 7 days of racing action only live here on TikTok and Twitch. Drop a follow down below if you are new. If you are watching on Twitch, Twitch is currently running a program called September, meaning you can get up to 35% off subscriptions. So if you are enjoying the racing action we are bringing you every single day of the week, do consider dropping a subscription down below to support all of us at NRRL. Your support is incredibly valued and appreciated, and anything that you can do, whether it's a follow, even just viewing the stream, subscribing, following on Twitch, following on TikTok, sending gifts on TikTok, whatever it may be, all of your support is incredibly appreciated. Thank you very much to anyone who has viewed, who has followed or subscribed before, and we look forward to joining you for a long, long time, bringing you much more racing action every single day of every single week. We are just awaiting now to get in the lobby. There was a lobby restart due to some connection issues for the drivers and for myself. And we will be loading back in, I believe, from the qualifying order. And there we go then. We have received an invite back to the session. And we will get ourselves in place. Ready to begin once more. We should be going shortly, ladies and gentlemen. Do not worry. We are restarting the lobby, I believe, from qualifying positions. Which will mean that Josh starts from pole position with his Ferrari teammate Dan Lovett in P2. I believe it's then KLR Dizzy in P3 and F1 Mikey Boy in P4. A few connection issues going on tonight. We do apologise to all viewers on TikTok and on Twitch for these connection issues. I believe there has been quite a few issues for a lot of people. There was an update, I believe today or yesterday, that has made the game quite glitchy. So there are a lot of these bugs going around, and we do apologise for any issues. Grid and weather is being sorted now, so we should be going any minute now, hopefully. We should be going any moment now, ladies and gentlemen. And there is confirmation that we will be starting from the qualifying order. So Josh will begin on pole position from his Ferrari teammate Dan Lovett, KLR Dizzy in third, and Mikey Boy in fourth. Should be going now, ladies and gentlemen. We do apologise for the delay. We should be going at any point now. There will be about a 5-minute break, just to let everyone get the setups on, get the tyre strategy done once again. And there is your confirmation. It will be a wet start once more. And we now just await the drivers to get all the setups on, get the strategies perfected, get the fuel allocation done. And we just await those 5 red lights ahead of the drivers to begin this Canadian Grand Prix once more. Here we are then, ladies and gentlemen, once more, the second start of this Australian Grand Prix, and it is lights out, and away we go. And interestingly enough, Dan Lovett on those wet tyres. He tried the inters at the first restart and going very wide there is Dizzy, the man that led for so long. Damage to the front wing of that V-carb, and he is off the track. Dan Lovett leads the race then. It is Mikey Boy in second, going up the inside of Josh. DGH is then in fourth and is really starting to challenge Josh. Just has to back out of it through there. But Dan Lovett, with the dream start, leads the Canadian Grand Prix. Mikey is right on the back of him though, but with a poor exit, just falling a bit behind. It is then Josh who is in third. A better restart than he had the first time, but still losing positions. Bruiser and I Have No Grip are on the intermediate compound tyres. It's DGH from Matt Connor, Mr. Jabe and Hash, the 2 Aston Martin teammates, going wheel to wheel towards the hairpin. A very tight line there for Hash, and actually sticks his teammate in the wall, I believe. There was contact there between the two of them. I don't believe any damage for either of them, but Mr. Jabe has lost a lot of time, and Dan Lovett has actually lost both positions to not only Mikey, but to Josh. So I don't know if that was a mistake there from Dan Lovett or some damage. I don't believe there's any damage to the front wing of that Ferrari, but as we move on to lap 2, it is Mikey that leads from Josh from Dan. DGH is then in fourth. It is Matt Connor in fifth, and the 2 Aston Martin scrapping away. The 2 Red Bull drivers scrapping away with Meldrum in that battle. This is the battle for 9th place. IRL Schumacher currently winning that one, and KLR Dizzy, he will not be a happy man after leading for the 5 laps until the disconnection. And on lap 1, sustaining massive damage, running very wide off the track. And now down in 14th position after having to change that front wing. Matt Connor is in fourth. There's two cars going wheel to wheel. That's Hash and DGH. Mr. Jabe is involved heavily in this battle, and it looks like we're going three wide into the chicane. No, we're not, because there's a massive crash between the two Aston Martins and the Haas driver. DGH with massive damage, Hash with damage, Mr. Jabe out of the session, and that is a huge crash. And somehow only the virtual safety car is deployed for that. That should always be a full safety car. But a massive crash. I thought we were going three wide into the hairpin. We didn't even make it to the hairpin. And in these torrential conditions, early drama, Hash comes into the pit lane and picks up a 10-second time penalty. But a massive, massive collision there. And that sees Mr. Jabe out of the session. Early drama in this Canadian Grand Prix. And that was a huge incident. One of the bigger incidents I've ever seen in NRRL. And we know that these conditions are very hard to drive in. And that proves it. Massive crash between the Haas and the two Aston Martin teammates. And Mr. Jabe out on lap 2. The virtual safety car is deployed. Drivers have to drive within 40% of their normal racing time. Bruiser picks up a drive-through penalty for speeding under the virtual safety car. And we go to green flag racing once more. And Josh can finally put his foot down and try and set after him. And again, we've got a lobby disconnection. This time on lap 3. We made it 5 laps last time. Now lap 3. And again, the lobby has disconnected. And once more, we are seeing the podium procedure and being booted out of the lobby. And the F1 servers do not want us to go racing tonight. As once more we have been booted out of the lobby. And we'll try and get some info to see if this race will be restarted. I've received an invite from Michaela. We will see if we can maybe get back into the lobby. I'm not sure if it's just me that's being disconnected or not. It would seem it might be. So, we load into the session then, and we are back. This is the same session. Mikey Boy leads from Josh. Dan Lovett in third, and Matt Connor in fourth. There is massive debris down the main straight, so we've obviously missed something. There is a massive, massive gap between Matt Connor in fourth and IRL Schumacher in fifth. Meldrum is up into sixth. Dizzy is just coming up to the back of Hash, who is on the back of DGH. Bruiser comes into the pit lane. I believe there's damage to that Red Bull, as there you can see the V-carb of KLR Dizzy running over the damage that is dispersed down the main straight. But Mikey Boy currently leading by 3 seconds. It is then Josh and Dan Lovett. Dan Lovett already moving off of the racing line to try and cool down those tyres, as Matt Connor is beginning to gain on him in the V-carb. We'll get all of the telemetry set back up, and we will ride on board with Matt Connor towards the hairpin. And big snap there for Matt Connor as they go through the final chicane. Struggling a lot was the V-car. Manages to make it through unscathed though. Loses a bit of time to Dan Lovett. But nothing too major going on in the way of incidents. We've got Meldrum running quite a quiet race, but a good race from Meldrum in 6th for McLaren. He is just now looking to try and settle into this race. He's got a gap ahead of him. He's got a gap behind him. And he will just look to try and settle down. You know, he's got the penalties, but it's a long old race is this one. Dan Lovett is starting to gain a tiny little bit on his teammate. Mikey is just quite comfortably leading out in front. And you can see the racing line is somewhat starting to form. In these torrential conditions here in Montreal today. You can see Dan Lovett going a little bit wide there, and that is going to provide Matt Connor with some impedance to try and get past down this main straight. A good exit for Dan though, and not much battery for Matt Connor. And Dan will be able to try and extend his lead. Josh is in 2nd and is losing a little bit of time to his teammate Mikey with the fastest lap of the race, a 27 flat, nearly into the 1 minute 26s was the Sauber. So he is adapting to these conditions very, very well. Meldrum now coming into the pit lane for a new set of tyres, and he's going on to the intermediates. Is Meldrum, so maybe the McLaren driver knows something we don't. It still looks very, very wet out there. But Meldrum onto the inters. It seems that Kevin and I Have No Grip, Hash and Bruiser also on the intermediate tyres. And while Mikey Boy sets the fastest lap of the race on... Oh, and that's Meldrum into the wall. I thought I may have bugged out there, but Meldrum has just gone into the wall straight after his pit stop and has got massive damage to that front wing. And will need to come into the pits again. And I don't know what happened there to the McLaren driver. I was just about to say is Mikey sets the fastest lap on full wet tyres. Meldrum into the wall out of the pits. And will need to box this lap for a new front wing. DGH quite easily goes round the outside of the McLaren and into 11th place. And we can see here Dan Lovett is reeling in his teammate. Matt Connor is on the back of this battle. Josh really not with any battery. So Dan Lovett in a great position here to try and make a move on his teammate if he exerts some of that battery. Josh does have a penalty though, a 3-second penalty to be exact. So if the race were to end now, Dan Lovett would be taking that 2nd place from him. IRL Schumacher currently in 5th position. A little bit of a wobble there out of turn 1. Nothing too major for him. As Hash picks up a 3-second time penalty. There's a little bit of a battle going on here between I Have No Grip and Sergeant Devsey. And this is an interesting battle. With the Williams driver on the inters, Sergeant Devsey on the full wets. It will be quite interesting to see what is quicker here. The inter or the full wet. You would imagine at this stage of the race it would still be the full wet tyres, and I mean you can see Sergeant Devsey is gaining quite a way away now from I Have No Grip, and that just sort of solidifies that I do believe the full wet tyres are still the ones to be on. Meldrum makes his way out of the pits and manages to keep it on the black stuff this time after making an adventure onto the grass. Dan Lovett is looking to gain on his teammate for 2nd place on track. He's very close to the back of the rear wing of his teammate, but not really troubling him for now. As we move on to lap 9 of 35, and Mikey Boy extending his lead out in front, currently 5.5 seconds for him. Just sliding his way through the chicanes, and there really is now a racing line starting to appear on the track. A purple sector 1 for Mikey. So it does look like the full wets are still the best tyre, although I have no grip, is beginning to gain a bit more on Sergeant Devsey. And like I say, with this racing line sort of being imprinted into the track, that is most certainly going to favour the intermediate runners, as that will get a little bit drier. Although it is, I would like to say it's at about the crossover where they are sort of the same in terms of pace. As we see once more, Matt Connor really now starting to come at Dan Lovett, and they are wheel to wheel coming out of the hairpin. Dan Lovett manages to get the better traction, but Matt Connor is giving it absolutely everything of that battery to try and get through. As we come towards the final chicane now then, Matt Connor is going to go down the inside. There is contact between the two of them, but Matt Connor manages to make his way through on the Ferrari. His next target is Dan Lovett's Ferrari teammate Josh, but a good calculated move there. It's been coming for a handful of laps now, and Matt Connor makes his way through up into third. He does have a penalty, as does Josh, but he should be able now to try and rock up to the back of the sister Ferrari and try and make his way through. As KLR Dizzy sets the fastest lap of the race, a 1:26.6. And look at the grip that Matt Connor has. I have no grip. Manages to get past Sergeant Devsey for 6th place on the intermediate tyres. So it does seem to me that the Inters may be coming a bit more into fashion now. And could we see some drivers into the pits for a pit stop? Lap 10 of 35. And I mean, you can see the amount of time that Matt Connor is gaining on Josh. He has got a lot more confidence in that car. He has got more battery in that car. And Matt Connor has got a real good chance of trying to get past Josh into the final chicane. As they come through now, Matt Connor does pull to the inside, almost dummies Josh into a defensive move. And Josh goes into the wall, and that is a big crash there. As Josh is out of the session, Matt Connor is round and doesn't have a front wing. And it was almost the bait move, and Matt Connor retires on track. And it was almost Matt trying to bait Josh into a defensive move. Josh bumping over the curbs and into the wall. Matt Connor goes into the back of him and decides enough is enough and retires on track. I have no grip, and Sergeant Devsey get 10-second penalties for speeding in the pit lane. And Mikey, who will have had about a 10-second lead, will now have that cut down. Dan Lovett moves into second. IRL Schumacher moves into third place. It is Kevin into fourth. And then a lot of drivers pitting for the intermediates. I did say I do believe the Inters are probably the better tyre for now, as the crossover period is beginning to happen. And well, will we see the three leaders into the pit lane? As Mikey comes towards the pits, is he going to come in for a change of tyres? Yes, he is. Now, will Dan Lovett follow him in, or will he try and take that elusive track position? Dan comes towards the final chicane and does come into the pits then, and gets a drive-through penalty for speeding under the safety car. So the man in second place, he comes in for the intermediate tyres, but will have a penalty to serve, a drive-through penalty for speeding under the safety car. And I think that might be a lobby glitch, because he'd come into the pit lane. Josh has left the session. Kevin, who also has just come into the pits, gets a drive-through penalty. And this is very, very confusing stuff here tonight in Canada. DGH also comes into the pits and gets a drive-through penalty for speeding under the safety car. So there is definitely some sort of glitch going on as drivers come into the pit lane. I'm sure of it. Because half of these drivers should not be being awarded penalties. Meldrum picks up a penalty for track limits. But this is very confusing stuff.